say that the NES has gained a new life would be an understatement. Who knew that decades after Nintendo discontinued their 8-bit console, it would receive so many new games, ports, and exclusives? But I can also see how this would be confusing to someone who has not been following these releases. So today, I'm going to take a look at several modern NES games and see whether or not they're worth your time and money. So let's get started! Gold Guardian Gun Girl is a twin-stick shooter mech game with randomized levels. You play as an anime girl riding a mech and you go around the various mine levels dispatching enemies, collecting gold, health recovery items, and fuel. You'll also pick permanent health upgrades and fuel upgrades, and you control your mech by moving with the D-pad, but aiming with the A or B buttons. So even though the NES controller has no analog sticks, it really does kind of end up playing like a twin-stick shooter. The levels, enemies, and power-ups are all randomly generated, and if you get lost, you can access a map that shows every area you've been to. With that said though, don't take too long exploring the levels because that fuel drains down fast. And once it's out, your mech will start consuming your HP instead. Overall, this is a pretty fun, if short game, with only 10 levels to explore, but once you finish it, you basically unlock New Game Plus, so there's that. In the end though, the game may be short, but it's super fun, and I had a blast with it. Check it out. Alfonzo's Artic Adventure is a platformer launched in 2018 by Spoony Bart Productions. You play as Alfonzo and your friend Bob has disappeared, so you decide to rescue him by collecting fish. Okay. Anyway, this is a pretty basic platformer with puzzle elements. You play as Alfonzo, and your job is to collect every fish in each level. Along the way, you'll find buddies you can trade places with, all of which have different abilities. So Alfonzo, for example, can hit enemies with a stick. Magnus can attack and break blocks below. Fenwood has a low jump but can break any blocks he comes in contact with. And the girl, yes, she's literally just called the girl, can shoot daggers. Now, as I said before, this game has puzzle elements, so you often have to think on the best way to reach your goal of collecting every fish per level, though most of these are fairly easy. At the end of each world, you also have a boss fight. The issue is, you go down in a single hit, whereas the bosses take multiple hits to bring down. Because of this, I thought they were a little on the cheap side, but it's nothing game-breaking or anything. Overall, this game's okay. It was fun, I guess, but nothing really outstanding. Eyra the Maiden is a platformer released for the NES in 2020. You play as Eyra, a barbarian who must save her fellow tribesmen who have been captured. This means that you go around each level and rescue all the captured tribesmen in that specific stage. Along the way, you'll find weapon upgrades that increase your range and damage. So you begin with a dinky little dagger, but can upgrade to a sword and even a battle axe. You also have a crow, with which you can use for long-range attacks, and as you defeat bosses, you'll gain upgrades. These can be permanent health boosts or new abilities like an air gliding maneuver. If this game seems familiar to you, it might be because I previously took a look at the Mega Drive version, which features better graphics, but for some reason had its gameplay slowed down. This, on the other hand, plays way faster, and the game is all the better for it. In fact, there's also a Super Nintendo version of this game in the works, and I'm just gonna say it, the NES version is the definitive way of playing this. The faster pace really makes this game way more fun, and I actually like the NES soundtrack better than its 16-bit counterparts. Heck, even the art style is better here if you ask me. I do remember enjoying the Sega version, but also feeling that the pace was a little too slow and that the level design could have been more interesting. Near as I can tell, the level design here is the same in both versions, but the increased speed really turns this into more of a full-on action platformer, and it just feels so much better. Honestly, this game is just great. If you're gonna play any version of Eyra, make sure it's this one. F-Theta is a racing game for the NES whose name is clearly parodying F-Zero for the Super Nintendo, and it's easy to see why, because this game has impressive background rotation features for the limited NES hardware. The problem is that the game isn't particularly interesting and it's super hard to control. But hey, at least the music's good and it has this incredible intro animation. Well, I think I just found my thumbnail. Sadly though, unless you're a YouTuber who uses attractive anime girls for clickbait purposes, I don't think there's much here for you. Alwa's Awakening is an NES port of the popular Steam game, and wow, this game is so good! You play as Zoe, and it's your job to stop an evil vicar who has taken over the land of Alwa, and this is an incredible Metroidvania for the NES. For one thing, I love the art style and the music is absolutely excellent. You have a pretty big map to explore, and you have to pick up gems that grant you new abilities and take out the various guardians who serve the vicar. So for example, the green gem allows you to create blocks that you can use as platforms, shields, or drag them to where you want them to be. In the meantime, you'll also find blue orbs scattered throughout the world that make you stronger. And you'll also pick up items that can be useful to certain NPCs, like coins. Seriously, the puzzle design, physics, platforming, art style, and music, they all just work together to form an incredible 8-bit game. I never played the modern version, but if it's anywhere as good as the NES version, then I am gonna give it a playthrough because I love this game to bits, and I highly recommend you check it out. Battle Kid: The Fortress of Peril is part Mega Man, part Metroidvania, and part I Wanna Be the Guy. You play as Timmy, a cadet in training when suddenly your base is attacked by an old friend of yours. So now, you have to don a special suit and go after the perpetrator. The game's controls and visuals are reminiscent of Mega Man, although your character moves a little faster. But the difficulty is actually closer to those old NES and Flash Challenge games like I Wanna Be the Guy. But thankfully, this game isn't quite as unforgiving as those games are, as you have a health bar and save points which restores your HP. The base is also immense, but many areas are either locked out until you meet certain requirements, or inaccessible until you get the correct upgrades. These can go from simple things, like letting you know which coordinates your current room is in, to higher jumps. I feel the graphics on this one are a little basic, but the music is pretty good. And I feel the rooms are well designed, striking a nice balance between platforming, puzzle platforming, and being difficult without being too frustrating. And at times, the game makes its Mega Man inspiration very clear in its visual design. Overall, I really enjoyed this one. Check it out! Battle Kid will be followed up by Battle Kid 2 Mountain of Torment. This game takes place directly after the first game, where you capture the traitor from the previous game, and we learn the good guys apparently have no issue with breaking the Geneva Convention and forcibly getting the answers they need by any means necessary. Yeah, I could have gone without that plot point. Anyway, graphically, the game looks the same as its predecessor, and the same goes for your controls. The main difference though is that you now die in one hit, and I am not a fan of this. Basically, the game now leans even more heavily towards the I wanna be the guy formula, and it kind of breaks that careful balance of challenge versus reward for me. I know that you can technically lower the difficulty, but I chose the normal setting on both games, and let me tell you, Battle Kid 2's difficulty is anything but normal. It's especially bad during boss fights where you have to hit them dozens of times but you cannot get hit even once, as well as during particularly difficult sets of rooms that do not feature a save point in between. If you're a glutton for punishment, you might enjoy this one, but me, I like the first one better. Blade Buster is a caravan shmup for the NES. If you don't know what that is, basically it's a score attack mode where you have to get as many points as possible in the shortest amount of time. In this case, either 2 minutes or 5 minutes, depending on your preference. The game plays like Star Soldier for the PC Engine, featuring the same power-ups, a button dedicated to increasing or decreasing your movement speed, and it even has an NES rendition of the main theme. But what really impressed me is how many sprites this game is pushing. At times, it honestly feels like this game is close to pushing 50 or more sprites. And while these do come with slowdown and sprite flickering, the mere fact that the game can push them at all, and that the offset is so minimal, is impressive. Then you add in some parallax scrolling and nice use of color, and you have one of the best looking and best 8-bit shmups I've ever played. Honestly, my biggest issue with this game is the fact that it's a caravan shooter. Why couldn't they have made a full game out of this? I was having so much fun with this game, but a mere 2-minute or 5-minute run left me wanting more. This game is just great, but there needs to be more of it, because as it is, it just left me feeling unsatisfied. But if the devs ever choose to make a full game out of Blade Buster, then we may have finally found a game to dethrone Power Strike 2 as the best 8-bit shmup. Chumlee Adventure: The Quest for Pinky is a game based on Pawn Star's Chumlee. Why this exists is beyond me. As you can see, you play as Chumlee, and the game is a parody of Irem's Kung Fu Master. I don't know if it's using the same engine or not, but the handling does feel different, so I'm inclined to say no. With that said though, this game is nowhere near as interesting as Kung Fu. You're honestly just better off playing that instead. I find the character designs unappealing, and Chumlee is a bit sluggish to control. Oh, and some of these bosses are super difficult. Still, you do at least get to punch Rick in the groin, so I guess there's that. But even then, this game isn't worth it, not even for the memes. I say skip this one. Next up, we have Jay and Silent Bob Mall Brawl, and after my previous experience with Chumlee Adventure, my expectations were understandably low. But lo and behold, this game is actually amazing. You play as Jay and Silent Bob, and you start wreaking havoc in a dating game show, before moving on to a mall. And I gotta say, I really dig the graphics, the controls, and the hit detection. Your reach is a bit low, but once you get a combo going, you can really cause a lot of damage to your foes. It kind of reminds me of the Kunio-kun games in that regard. You also got weapons you can pick up, which add to your reach and damage output, but will break easily. Another cool thing is that if you're playing alone, you can switch between Jay or Silent Bob on the fly by hitting select, and each one has their own health bar. Even better, as time passes, whoever you're not using will start regaining health by themselves. Throw in some trademark Kevin Smith humor like the Rug Muncher shop, some Jay and Silent Bob references like Snooch to the Nooch, and even some bonus stages for some much needed variety, and you honestly have a winner here. For this game I'd pay $50, little man. Put that game in my hand. If that game doesn't show, you owe me, oh. Check it out if you can. Astro Ninja Man is the best take on the Galaga and Space Invaders formula I have ever seen. Just look at it! This is super fun, super trippy, and the music is incredible. Okay, so you need to take down all the enemies as they come, and you can either shoot at them or wait for your ninja gauge to reach its max and release a more powerful attack. Occasionally this thing appears and you can shoot its power-ups to gain clones. These will add to your firepower, and if you get hit, you lose one of them. And that's it! That's the game, and I freaking love it! This just goes to show you that sometimes you do not need a high concept or deep storyline to put out an incredible game. There's also a re-release of this game called Astro Ninja Man DX, which adds a quick game option, which is basically a caravan mode. Honestly though, it doesn't matter which version you get. This game is incredible, and I highly recommend this one. Fire and Rescue. You're a fireman and you have to put out fires and rescue anyone trapped. Your water gauge is limited, so you often have to go back and fill it up, and you can only carry one person at a time. So you need to be careful to not be hit by a fire, but also to not run out of time. This one's okay. Honestly, there's not much to it. It's not bad, but not something I'd go out of my way to play. Steins Gate, based on the popular anime which I've never watched. In fact, my entire knowledge of Steins Gate can be summed up in just 3 syllables. And that's it. That's all I know about the anime. This is a visual novel style game by M2? Really? M2 made this? Okay. So, anyway, this is a visual novel style game, which as far as I know is a retelling of the anime series. You are a mad scientist who created a cell phone that can send text messages to the past, when suddenly a time traveler crashes onto your roof who happens to be the as of yet unborn daughter of your engineer friend. So you need to go find parts for a time machine, but I don't know, honestly, this game's logic was lost on me. Like, people wouldn't get started on their work unless I gave them a cola, and the story and dialogue are so basic that I can only assume they were heavily trimmed from the original anime or manga. And you're always being sent to point A to talk to person B, before having to go to point C, and then pick up thing D to then give it to someone else. I'll be honest, I lost interest in this one really quick. And it does not help that the visuals, music and writing were all kind of basic and they just really did not grab me. I just hope that at least they did not remove the best line from the show.
Hey master, I am mad scientist. It's so cool, son of a bitch.
If you like Steins Gate, you might enjoy this one. But me, I'm out. The Legends of Owlia is a Zelda clone released in 2016. You live in a village where apparently people train their owls as pets and companions. But the Merman King does not appreciate their owl-based religion, so he kidnaps their secret owls and now it's up to you to save them. And I gotta say, I really don't like how this game looks. I mean, the sprite works fine, but the colors chosen are just so unappealing. You play as Adlaniel, an elf with a pet owl who kind of stumbles onto her quest. You have a sword you can use as your main form of attack, as well as an owl for long-range attacks and fetching things. As you progress through the game, you'll unlock more abilities for your owl, including opening locked doors and dropping bombs. With that said though, you can only have 2 owl abilities equipped at any time, and you switch between them with the select button. And as you clear dungeons, you'll be moved to a new area and become locked out of the previous zones you've been to, so be sure you're done exploring before fighting that zone's boss. One thing that bothers me about this game is how it can be cryptic on what you need to do or where you have to go. I spent my first half hour just wandering aimlessly, not knowing what to do. Turns out you have to go to this tree and an important owl tells you what to do. Problem is, no one in town was very clear on this, so I had to check an online guide. I also had a similar problem with this puzzle where you need these flying fish to light up a specific part of the floor at the same time and then damage them both also at the same time. This game had potential, but I feel it could do with less cryptic design. Overall though, it's not bad. Check it out if it seems your thing. Galplus, as the name implies, is Galaga Plus. At first, this looks like regular Galaga but with better graphics. But do not be fooled, because once you get an upgrade, you'll quickly see just how insane this game is. For starters, knocking out a bug carrying a ship does not give you a double shot. Instead, you fire the capture beam back at him, and now you're the one capturing the bugs, and they join you instead. That is insane, and I love it! Look at how much destruction I'm weaving! And other times you instead get a double shot, but without having the second ship attached to you. Oh, but that's not all, because during the challenge stages, you have to jiggle your enemies to score more points. And then you have levels where you travel backwards and the bugs never even create a formation on top of the screen. You just have to survive their onslaught instead. Man, as a huge Galaga fan, I have to say, this game is just great. Check it out. La Baie Des Morts is a Euro-style platformer that mimics the level design of ZX Spectrum games like Jet Set Willy. There's a chance that you might be familiar with my reviews of this game for the Mega Drive, which was almost exactly the same as the NES version, except you could change the graphical style to mimic the Game Boy, the MSX, the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64, and other systems. Well, I'm sad to say that this feature was not included in the NES version, meaning that what you see is what you get, and what you get is a pretty basic but tough as nails platformer, where you have to collect 12 crosses while solving a few puzzles to progress. Thankfully, you do get hints to help you. They can be a bit cryptic, but become pretty clear if you're willing to experiment. Now, with this being a ZX Spectrum style platformer, you really have no means of self-defense, and must instead avoid enemies at all costs. I've said in previous videos that I really like this game, but that I also know that this particular subgenre of platformer is a little niche, so it might not be for everyone, and that goes doubly so for the NES port, which is missing the gimmick of switching game systems from the Mega Drive version. Because of this, I think you're better off playing the Sega version, but this one's fine too, I guess. Power the Lost Dimension is a port of the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive game to the NES, and wow, this version is impressive. Graphically, it looks incredible for the NES, with a great use of color and a nice art style. What's more interesting though is just how different this feels from the other Gem Power games. For example, you can now charge an attack and you even have hit points, so when you get hit, you don't actually lose a life, but your weapon will downgrade a level instead. Not only that, but enemies now move much slower and are way easier to defeat. If you've ever played any of the 16-bit console ports of Gem Power, then you know that enemies were super fast and would often sneak up on you. But here, they're super easy, barely an inconvenience. On the other hand, your controls have gotten so stiff that the platforming has now become incredibly brutal. Not helped by the fact that if you lose a life, you now start over from the beginning of the stage, instead of continuing where you left off like the 16-bit versions. But on the other hand, the levels have now been split up into multiple stages. So for example, level 1, which used to be just one long stage in the 16-bit versions, has now been split into 3 different levels, all of which feature the same boss with increasingly difficult variations. Also, some levels have been switched around, like you now have this shmup stage first, and only then do you fight what used to be the level 1 boss from the 16-bit versions. All of these variations kind of make the NES port of Gem Power the most interesting version to date, because it changes so much while still feeling like Gem Power. It's like playing a weird alternate version of the original game, and I kinda love it. I am a big fan of every version of Gem Power I've ever played, and this NES port is no exception. If you're a fan of the original game, check this one out. And even if you're not, I still say check it out. Gotta Protector's Amazon's Running Diet is a game by... Ancient? Ancient made this? The studio behind Streets of Rage 2? And wait, is that Yuzo Koshiro on the soundtrack I see? Man, I can't wait to see what game he came up with. Well, if nothing else, I'm spoiled for choices for the thumbnail with this video. Okay, so you play as this cutesy and scantily clad anime Amazon girl, and she's training to lose weight. So your job is to pick up the T icons to keep her hydrated, while avoiding the cake icons, and that's it? That's the game. Wow, so you really came out of retirement for this game? Anyway, if you eat too many cakes, she falls down.
Nice.
And the earth splits in half because of a falling ass bomb. Ah, Japan! Of course you would say something like this. After that, you're brought to a screen where you can see how much weight your Amazon lost or gained from her training. I'll give it this. The game looks good and the sprite detail is impressive. And the music is also pretty great. But as you can tell, this is a very short game. I'll leave it up to you to decide whether or not this is for you. Project Blue is a platformer released in 2019 by Toggle Switch Games. You're some sort of lab experiment and you're trying to escape. So you go around several challenge rooms, firing at enemies, collecting coin icons for money, and picking up the occasional health for weapon power-up. The game design kind of reminds me of Battle Kid, except that this is not a Metroidvania, nor is it inspired by Mega Man. This is all about the challenging room designs and how you approach each one. I have to say, I really love the colors in this game, and in general the sprite and background work are really well done, especially considering how small everything is. And the music is also pretty good. Sadly though, the gameplay got a little boring for me. There's something about this style of game and level design that just could not grab my attention for long. This one just isn't for me, but if you like what you see, check it out! Micro Mages is one of the more popular modern NES games, and with good reason too, because this game is awesome. For starters, the game can be played by up to 4 players, which in of itself is something of a rarity for the system. But I have no friends, so I played this one alone. You're a micro mage, and you can shoot in all 4 directions as well as wall jump, and you have to climb the tower before the auto-scrolling reaches you, and the further up top you are, the faster the scrolling becomes. Along the way, you'll defeat enemies, pick up extra items for points, as well as power-ups like shields that give you an extra hit point, or feathers which let you hover in mid-air. And I gotta say, fighting your way to the top of the tower is super fun, and I can only imagine how fun this game must be if you're the type of human who has friends. I will say I thought the boss fights were all fairly easy, but that does not detract from how fun this game is. You should absolutely check this one out. Mystic Origins is another Zelda-style game. This time you play as a vagabond with a magic lute and you need to save the land which is beset by a number of threats. And this game actually juggles a lot of interesting mechanics. For one thing, you have a day-to-night cycle and you can see it changing in real time as you play. And this will change the monster types you face while exploring the wilderness, which shops are open or closed, and which NPCs are available to you. Not only that, but you also gain experience for each foe that you defeat. You also have this jumping maneuver, which lets you cross chasms and destroy rocks. I will say though that I thought the hit detection on this was a little out of sync, and in one case, it even got me stuck on an NPC's hitbox. You also collect items and abilities that let you progress further in the game, similar to Zelda, like a charging magic that lets you light up torches, or a jar of fireflies to light up dark areas. But then you also learn new songs that allow you to progress the game, and you play these songs by bringing out your lute and using the correct button inputs. But then, in order to play each note, you need enough inspiration points, which you get by defeating enemies, destroying bushes, or by buying them off a store. Man, you think that's enough gameplay mechanics? I will say that one issue I have with the day-to-night cycle is that the graphics can get kind of ugly during certain parts of the day, and I do feel the sprites and sound design could use some work. But regardless, this is a highly ambitious game for the NES that is worth a playthrough. If you're into Zelda, I say check this one out. Next up, we have Almost Hero, a beat-em-up in which you play as a ninja and need to collect bonsai seeds. The game is a beat-em-up that seems to be inspired by River City Ransom, but unfortunately, the gameplay was nowhere near as fun. For one thing, there doesn't seem to be any combos. Instead, you just dish out individual punches and kicks, not helped by the fact that enemies will often sneak in attacks while you're punching them. So it's usually a good idea to attack, walk away, and then attack again. Levels will often have items that you can throw at enemies, and while these are helpful, I feel it can take too many hits to bring them down. Once you do defeat a foe, however, they'll drop items including money, which you can spend at a shop for healing items, or foot passion. Learn everything you ever wanted to know about feet. This is starting to sound a lot like an OnlyFans listing. Honestly, I couldn't get into this one at all. Stick with Jay and Silent Bob instead. City Trouble is an action platformer where you play as a girl looking to take down street gangs with her taser. Graphically, the game looks rather basic, though I do like the parallax scrolling in the background. The issue is that taking down enemies just isn't very fun. When you hit them with your taser, they become paralyzed but quickly recover. Your taser, however, has a limited energy supply and needs time to recharge, which is not helped by the fact that some enemies need multiple hits to bring down, or the fact that your controls are a little stiff. The game is also constantly scrolling, and if you get too close to the edge of the screen, you lose a life. And I don't know, considering the bad guys have women flying around in rocket boots, I'm kind of inclined to think that they're the cooler faction. Overall, yeah, I'm not really feeling this one.
Let's get it on.
No, I don't think I will. Full Quiet is a game that did not give me a great first impression, but quickly won me over. At first I thought this was a hunting themed run and gun, but it's actually more of an action-adventure game in the style of Simon's Quest or Zelda 2, mixed in with survival horror. You play as a hunter who discovers the forest is teeming with monsters that might be aliens or some kind of cosmic entity. Along the way, you find notes and hints left for you by another friend of yours who tells you that you need to reach 7 different cabins and set up their radios for clues. The game is pretty large with twisting, winding paths, but you have a compass which tells your cardinal directions, as well as a map that lets you know where you've been and highlights important destinations. You also have an inventory where you can bring up helpful items like ropes, cables to fix machinery, different weapons, and healing items. And the game also has a day-to-night cycle, with the game telling you that it's a good idea to stay indoors past 2 AM or you'll be hunted by something. Like, this is really impressive stuff, and I also like how you also have to worry about weapon reloads as well, and the platforming even has a few hints of a cinematic platformer. There's a lot going on with Full Quiet, but I have to say, it all comes together really well, and in turn, this might just be the most ambitious NES game I've ever played. In fact, it's so ambitious that it often feels like the NES controller does not have enough buttons for everything. But regardless, this is a pretty incredible game, and I say, check it out. Rollie is a platformer launched in 2019. You play as this raccoon-style character, and you can jump on enemies, throw seeds at them, or create bubbles to take out foes above you. You can also roll to fit through narrow gaps, and there's even some basic physics when you hit the ground while rolling. In fact, this game has an impressive amount of abilities for you to use. From food that slows down the pacing of your enemies, to items that change your color and add new abilities like falling down slower or even walking on air. You can even take out flying enemies, grab their legs, and use them to fly towards your goal, which is pretty cool. The graphics and sound though are a bit on the basic side, and I have to admit, despite all the power-ups available, I found the game kind of boring honestly. For some reason, it just wasn't particularly interesting for me. I know some people really love Rollie, but I'm not one of them. This is just not for me. What remains is an adventure game with some pretty interesting themes. It's 1986 and you come across a secret NES cartridge that contains secret messages from a major conglomerate. You hack into it by playing a game of Pong, which reveals how they control the media and are influencing people's opinions on issues like smoking and recycling by spreading misinformation. You then need to find specific characters to do some literal whistleblowing and fix these societal issues. Yeah, the game is a bit heavy-handed with its themes, but it does seem to be in genuine good faith, and I think most of these are points that were hot topics in the 80s, but looking back, we can generally agree with the message. As you talk to characters and influence the world around you, you can see the changes they bring as people become healthier when they stop smoking, or how the local fauna and flora benefit from recycling. Sadly though, the game itself is a little on the basic side. There's no action or combat, and it's really about going from point A to point B. But still, I did enjoy the dialogues here more than I did Steins Gate. Reknum Soul's Adventure is another Legend of Zelda style game. You play as Cherry, an elf trying to find her lost family, so you'll explore the land from both an overworld and a side-scroller perspective. You'll also come across dungeons where you pick up new weapons like a boomerang and a shuriken. Sadly though, I really do not like the controls for this one. Using the sword is super stiff, as it requires the animation to finish before you can move again, and long-range weapons take a lot of hits to bring down your foes. Enemies also get stuck in places, and sometimes in places that you need to traverse, which can force you to take damage with no other recourse. The game also seems pretty short, 20 minutes in and I already had 2/3 of the inventory filled up. Not to mention that there really isn't much of a difference between the boomerang and the shuriken. Sadly, I can't recommend this one. And finally, we have Larry and the long look for a Luscious lover. This is a port of the first Leisure Suit Larry game for the NES, and I gotta say, not only is this a surprisingly faithful port of the PC original, but the menus and interactions do a good job at replacing the text parser of the original, making the entire experience feel more streamlined. But of course, for some people, part of the charm is having to type out your own actions and see if the game recognizes them. But I did find that I did not mind the updated controls nearly as much as I thought I would. Other than that, well, it's Leisure Suit Larry. I'll admit I prefer the PC original, but this is not a bad way of playing the game at all. If anything, it makes me wish that the Master System port of King's Quest was more like this project. There's also an updated version called the Engagement Edition, which adds a playful intro animation where we see that Larry is actually a robot, and we even get a cameo by Prince Graham. But other than that, near as I can tell, it's the exact same game. And there you have it! a look at a pretty good selection of modern NES games. Are there any games I missed? Let me know in the comments. In the meantime, I'd like to thank all our Patreon supporters, including my newest backer, Chris Rosenau. Thank you for helping make the channel better. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. Bye!